Hello and welcome. My name is Trismegistus, and today we're going to be planning our way through the Factorio Friday Facts. Friday Facts 440, 2.1 plan, posted by Clonan. Hello, it has been some time and we're happy to share some news with you today. So I guess I should just quickly explain, because quite a lot of my subscribers and viewers have actually joined since I started doing the lore speculation videos. So back before that, I used to do read-throughs of the Factorio Friday Facts and do a lot of wild speculation and guessing and also talking about, kind of trying to explain some of the detail of what they were talking about from my experiences of having done a little bit of software development. So this is kind of a return to that. Except not, because this kind of is marking the end of the era. Whether we'll get any more Friday Facts after this, I don't know. I suspect maybe one or two. We'll talk about that later. But basically what the format for this is I will read through the Friday Facts. I will give little comments as we go along. But then at the end of the video, which may you want to skip to, I will do a little bit more in-depth speculation, although there's not a lot to speculate on in this. 2.1 plan. We have been working on the major 2.1 update for Factorio and Space Age for the last 8 months, and it has been shaping up quite well. I guess to add a little bit of context to that, this is the kind of timeline for the expansion, announced in 2021. They revealed what it was all about in August 2023, and then it was released on 21st of October 2024, along with the 2.0 update to the base game. Now, they did say they were going to take, after the release of Space Age, quite a long break. Basically, they did a little bug fixing and then kind of slowed down, took a big break, let everyone kind of recharge the batteries and discuss the new game that they're supposed to be working on. So that is quite a while. 21st of October 2024 is about 18 months ago. So if they started work on this about 8 months ago, then that was about 10 months, a year, something like that, where they were not really talking about 2.1, though obviously they have been updating, releasing bug fixes and all that sort of stuff. Scope and expectations. Generally, we are happy with the game design of Factorio and Space Age. The progression is good, things are mostly well balanced, one or two exceptions, and there isn't anything we feel is majorly missing. That is to say, we didn't go into 2.1 development with grand designs of large new pieces of content or huge features. It will be mostly quality of life, some small features, fixes and game polish, modding improvements. And to state it clearly, no new planets, no new enemies, no new research trees or resource chains. So this is obviously a containing statement, basically a sort of and if you didn't see it, if you're just watching this randomly, I did a what I wanted 2.1 video, and then I did a follow-up of what you wanted in 2.1, looking at some of your comments. I never really thought anything in 2.1, a couple of I really wanted, but I never really thought anything in that 2.1 video that I did would actually make it into the game. It was all big changes that I couldn't really see them actually doing, though I would have loved to have seen, and maybe still hope might come out in a mod or something like that. But yes, I thought maybe some of your suggestions, which were a bit small scale mostly, might have made it. And I am still thinking and mulling about, particularly with the mention of what they will cover, whether I'll do another video on that, talking about smaller stuff. Yeah, we'll have to see. But we will come back to this later. I'll speculate on... Well, I say I'm very conscious that a lot of people won't have seen these videos before and might be clicking on this, for the first time. There's a lot I tend to interpret from things that aren't said, so you've got several lists there that don't have things on them, as it were. So I will probably go completely mad speculating about what is just stupid, over the top stuff, but we'll get to that later. Current state. We had one of our traditional office LAN playtestings 2 weeks ago. Our last chance to catch anything missing or feel some larger things to change about the game. I assume that means like feel out or feel, that they might want to do some larger changes. For a little bit of a challenge, we decided to play a Death World and also attempt the Keeping Your Hands Clean achievement, which means we couldn't kill any biter bases until we researched artillery. So this screen capture then is just has the caption how our factory looked at the end of day one, and it is just an in-game capture. I have kind of tried to scrutinize this in my usual way. There's nothing on here that I didn't recognize, as it were. So I think this is just representative of the early game is unchanged, and there's nothing new going on. It's a death world, so there's a lot of biters on it basically. After the somewhat brutal first day, our expeditionary engineers returned from Volcanus with the big guns, so we could get the achievement and breathe a little easier. Overall, the playtesting went super smoothly. We played our way through all the planets and finished with a respectable time of 53 hours and 15 minutes. We didn't find any big bugs, no desyncs or save corruptions, and really no impediment to the next step of our plan. The next step. For the next few weeks, we will do some closed beta testing, and if all goes well, we hope to release 2.1 as experimental by the end of June. So you won't be able to sign up for that closed beta test, but it is coming to experimental. Experimental means the update is public, but you will need to opt in to receive it through Steam or the in-game updater, or specifically download the experimental release from our website. So yes, I have mentioned this before, and Exterminator has quite a good little video just showing you how to enable experimental if you haven't, if you don't know how to do that. It's very, very simple. You just go into, if you're using Steam, even easier if you do it from the website. You can just literally download it and there it is. But basically, if you go to Steam, you're opting into a beta test. Basically, that's kind of what you're doing. And you just select the experimental version. I've said it before, and it's well worth getting the experimental version for Factorio because it helps them out, provides them with analytics and data, early bug fixing. And I always play on the experimental. I've never had it crash or disastrously fall over or what have you. I'm hoping, one of the things that is still there is the mislabeling of the parameterization system, where basically it tells you the wrong things. So that's the type of thing that might be an experimental, but that's in the base game as well. That's generally broken. But it's the type of thing they'll fix, and then if there is some error, like they've typoed it or something, you can feed that back to them. Once released, we will have the usual bug fixing before our summer vacation starts in July. Importantly, we plan to keep 2.1 as experimental over the whole summer, i.e. not market stable, so that mod authors will have plenty of time to update. So if you want to play that 2.1 experimental, you're going to need to opt in, because you're not going to be able to get it till, let's say, autumn, although I would suspect probably winter is when it will become stable and sort of finalised. So might be pushed to main branch somewhere around the sort of September, October time, and maybe goes final in December or something like that. And in the long term, we envisage 2.1 as our last major update of Factorio, and we will shift the focus onto long-term support. So things like bug fixes, platform support, compatibility, modding features, etc. Other than that, we feel we've reached a good place to conclude the active gameplay development. So that's it. That's the confirmation. 2.1 is the end of Factorio and Space Age development. I'm guessing is always the possibility. You've seen it with some other, indie games and even major games. Well, for example, Witcher 3, ironically, for what they're saying there, is literally just releasing a new expansion, and that's a game that's multiple years old, and I'm pretty sure it's, on that note, I think it's a tie-in to the new game, but basically, they might suddenly realise something that they want to add, and they'll just stick it in as just an extra little thing. Maybe they juice the sales a bit, sort of thing, and they'll do a little hoopla to do it. But essentially, this blog post represents the beginning of the end of the active development of Factorio. Obviously, the game's going to keep. You can still play the game. There's not stopping support. But yes, this is it, as they say. What else has been going on? In a previous post, Friday Facts 439, we mentioned that we have been starting work on projects other than Factorio. Honestly, there will not be anything to share for a long time, but you might notice some of our team members less active fixing bugs and working on Factorio as they spend their time on other game prototypes and experiments. We have hired a few new humans to help with the development of Factorio and the new projects. So I think the new humans thing is basically saying they're not using AI. I think that's a subtle confirmation that they're not doing AI. They're not outsourcing all their development to Claude or something like that. Which, I mean, I think AI would literally have to be perfect for them to even consider it. And even then, I can't see them actually ever doing it. They have too much pride in essentially doing it themselves. The point of it being a handcrafted experience by people, I think, is probably quite important to them, and good on them. I think that is a very important, particularly for indie games, and a game like this. It's, how can I phrase it? It's important that it's human developed, even when it falls short. Anyway, a bit of a side topic there, but yeah. So they've hired Adam, programmer and GUI UX, Simon, technical lead, and Mishka, creative assistant. It is also a natural time for some of our team to spread their wings and rocket off to new challenges, such as our long-time rendering expert, Priscilla. Priscilla worked with us for 10 years in the deepest parts of the game engine and rendering systems, and helped make sure the game is playable for as many players as possible. He took the noble sacrifice in the office to use only old, outdated NVIDIA and AMD graphics cards to make sure we don't lose touch with low-end performance, and perform several miracles around the new rendering VRAM demands over the years. As he takes his very well-deserved time of peace and relaxation, his legacy and impact in the code, company and community will never go without thanks. Priscilla dedicated really to making sure the game kind of runs on a potato, basically, both graphically, game engine and rendering. So basically graphically and the actual, the code of the game itself, in other words, the sort of gameplay system. So one of the things that is amazing about Factorio is how performant it is. It is almost, I wouldn't say miraculous, but you can literally run it on, well, the Steam Deck runs it fine, sort of thing. I mean, you can't really mega base on it, and struggles a bit with Space Age, but yeah, it's an incredibly performant game. Obviously, they have advantages in that sprite-based game and that sort of thing makes it less sort of taxing on graphics, for example. But yes, that isn't to denigrate it in any way, but it is a remarkably performant game. So fine work there. Programming wizard Tobias. Tobias helped us through the thick of Space Age development, tracking down the trickiest and most painful bugs and weird crashes, and coming out the other side with a beautiful and magical fix. Other than that, he was responsible for a lot of the circuit connections for new entities, polishing and logic fixes for many of the new systems, Aquilo freezing, space platforms, etc., as well as general touch-ups here and there, even being brave enough to delve into the GUI. Oh, crikey. Never, always a thankless task, the GUI. GUI is one of those things that, it's a graphical user interface, or GUI, GUI, as Americans tend to say, but it's one of those things that if it's good, absolutely nobody notices and nobody praises it. If it's bad, everyone complains. So it's one of those thankless tasks in development is GUI. One of the things I would just note, you've obviously got a couple of people moving on here and there, and they have had people leave and join and what have you, and it's been quite a long development for Factorio. But it's kind of remarkable that they have kept people for so long, particularly with software developers. They do tend to move around quite a bit. Because they join for a project, they join for, and develop a game, and that's usually quite hard work, and maybe lasts 3 years, 5 years, for Factorio 10 years, and so they're kind of done with that, or they may go on and make more games with other companies, but typically they won't, they'll move house basically after that. So it is kind of remarkable, given how long the game has been going, that it is such a stable team, that a lot of them have been there a long time, and that is kind of testament to, I guess, how they run it, and the game itself is clearly interesting enough to work on, that it keeps people there. As well as Dawn of the Rising Star by Arundel. Over 5 years ago, I was approached by Wilby to join the Factorio team. Obviously, because it's written in first person, it's not me. I wasn't approached. Arundel was. They're the one with talent. At the time, I was co-owner and art director of a games development company and deep into the early phases of a new game project. Factorio was my favourite game though, and Wilby is one of the most well-respected development studios in the world, so it was an opportunity that I just couldn't pass up. Not only did I know that I enjoyed working on Factorio content because of my mods, but I also knew that I had a lot to offer. In fact, I might dare to say that I could offer skills and experience that nobody else in the world could. I joined the team, helped produce Space Age and improve the base game along the way. Although my title was officially concept artist, my actual role has been far more diverse, branching into other areas including terrain generation systems, my favourite thing in 2.1 or Space Age, game design, art direction alongside Albert, game engine code, and much more. It's been a great experience and I'm very grateful to the team and the friends I've made along the way. Now it's time for me to move on. My own creative inspirations are calling to me, so I'm leaving to make my own games. As for what I'm making, well, I'm not ready to announce that fully. I have 2 prototypes that I'm working on and I don't have a clear winner yet. It will either be a deep, turn-based tactical game with rich lore, a lot of secrets and a few puzzle elements, or an exploration-focused puzzle platformer with a lot of secrets and climbing-based combat. Of those 2, I vote for the first one. I am terrible at platforming, so I probably wouldn't play that game because I am just so bad at any kind of element of platforming. In the long run, I intend to make both of these games, and more after. So the question is which one to make first. If either of these sound interesting to you, then please follow me in one of these locations. So if go to the Friday Facts and click on any of these links. So Discord, a friendly community where you can say hi. My existing devlog is posted here for free, but 1 month behind the Patreon content. If you don't know, I mean, it's not specifically said here, Arundel is the person behind space exploration. I believe there are coders and stuff that help with the development of that, but the space exploration mod, which, let's put it this way, Space Age was planned from the beginning for Factorio in the sense that it was meant to really in the base game. I think a lot of what was in space exploration or ideas that Arundel had, concepts that they wanted to do but maybe couldn't or hadn't got round to, made their way into Space Age. An example being something like the railgun is a system in both of those games, but a railgun's a sci-fi thing, so but the particular implementation of it is quite similar in terms of the handheld one anyway. Patreon, you can support me here or you can join as a free member to just get the big announcements. YouTube, I'm releasing a video explaining a bit more about how I'm thinking about my next projects, or a mailing list sign up form. If like me you don't really like social media, I'm not a big fan either, then this mailing list will be used only to announce when the game is available. So the video is a 10-minute, so you can go on the, on the Friday Facts and click on it. If I remember, I'm crap at that sort of thing. I'll put the links in the, in my description as well, and check it out and see what you think. Basically, thanks again to Wilby. I wish you all the best for your future endeavours. Merch shipping and plans. We also recently welcomed a new member of the office team, Patty, whose role is to help optimise and expand our merchandise operations, and they give a link to the merch store. After some trouble with Czech Post, we have been able to resume eShop deliveries to the USA with a new shipping company, I don't know how to pronounce that, Pakita Chesilkovna, I think maybe. We also have some plans for new merch, but it is quite early in the pipeline. So, you can go to the Factorio store, and it's mostly around t-shirts, mostly t-shirts. They do have these cool sort of patches you can do. I have one of these, the black drawstring bag. It is, if it's anything like the one I've got, which I can't imagine they've changed it. It's a high quality one. You get some of these, they're horrible. It's they'll be like that shiny plasticky, what is it, like acrylic-y type material, and very thin drawstrings that really dig into if you try and actually use it. This isn't. This is full-on fabric. I'm shilling for them now, but yeah. So it's full-on. It's all fabric. This logo that's never coming off, to be honest with you. You'd have to wash it a million times, I think, to get rid of that. And then the drawstrings are like proper, really thick and therefore comfortable if you're using it. Drawstring. So yeah, it's a high quality piece of kit. That I say I got it free with the LAN party. I'm not boasting about the LAN party. Yes, I am boasting about the LAN party. But yeah, so they got some t-shirts. My personal request, and it goes out again, is plushies. I'm too fat basically to wear a lot of these t-shirts. They'd need to be like 5XL to even come close to fitting me. I'd love to get one, but I just know they wouldn't fit. So for me, I'd love plushies or keychains, or if expanding it, then that's that type of thing would be great. Particularly like a little plush biter, a little plush, maybe a spitter. It might be a bad design to do, but a little plush pentapod or a wriggler or something like that. And what else? I guess the demolisher would be a bit of a simple design though, wouldn't it? It's just a tube. Things like that would be much appreciated. I would happily fill my many rooms with tat, even more tat than I've got now. So yeah, badges, bigger badges. I'm not. People love stickers, don't they, nowadays? But I'm not a personal fan of them. But yeah, if they are expanding, then that would be my requests. Mostly the plushie biter. As always, plan your thoughts at the usual places. Okay, so first thing I wanted to pick on was this: things are mostly well balanced, one or two exceptions. We kind of already know what they're referring to there, and it's not really, I don't know, it's a speculation as such. I guess I could speculate about how they might solve it, but what they're almost certainly referring to, at the very least, is the LDS Shuffle and Space Casinos. If you don't know, LDS Shuffle is essentially an exploit where when you recycle low-density structures, you can get the recipe it recycles back into is the solid item recipe, so the plastic, steel and copper cable, but you can make it out of liquid materials, and liquids can't be quality. So basically what you're able to do is if you put in legendary plastic, then what you recycle out is legendary materials. So if you make a legendary low density structure using normal steel or normal liquid iron, normal copper, liquid copper, molten copper, what you get out is the legendary version. So you're effectively putting in normal stuff and guaranteeing the output of legendary stuff. I mean, guaranteeing, with recycling ratios aside, but what you're putting in is normal, and what you're getting out is quality. So you're massively skipping the steps in between to make the quality stuff. There's a couple of ways they could fix that. One would be that you don't get legendary solid materials out of recycled low density structures. That would be a very, very simple fix. I don't think they do that, but they could fix it in other ways. The other thing is the space casinos. This is basically that because you can put quality modules into crushers, as you crush asteroid chunks, you can level them up in quality, and then of course once you've got legendary iron asteroids, you can make legendary iron plate and legendary steel and blah 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 blah. So it becomes more about grinding through asteroid chunks on platforms, and of course there's entire research is dedicated to improving your yield for platforms, your asteroid yield, to the point where having your quality stuff produced in space is basically easier. You still need a big platform. It's not simple, you've got to manage it all, so it's not completely cheating in a sense. It's not a massive exploit in that sense, but it does make it a lot easier, and in particular makes it more what you might call guaranteed. So it removes some of the chance-based element. That would be a very easy one to fix by simply doing something like not allowing quality modules in crushers, so you can only make regular stuff, and then if you want to make quality in space, you've got to recycle the stuff you've made, basically. So that would be quite an easy fix for that. So yeah, so I believe those are the two things they are referring to. There could be others, there could be other things that they feel are not well balanced or what have you. I would suspect if they are, they're more talking about the amount of stuff needed to produce a particular recipe, for example, that it's too expensive or too cheap even. One of the things that they did mention, I think it was a Covrex one, I can't remember, but about having a sort of a goal, a dream of 1,000,000 science per minute as a base that produced 1,000,000 science per minute mega base, and people did that within like a month of the expansion releasing because of if you take it as e-science, effective science, because of your productivity bonuses, you do enough of them and it's not that hard, it's just scale, and maybe they thought that was too cheap, and so maybe they'll make it slightly more expensive, or nerf the science productivity or something like that. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about, this is, if I've been saying throughout, if you've never seen one of these before, when I get into this speculation, I do a lot of reading into things that it's like what they've omitted is, sometimes more illuminating than what they've said. So it's what they've not said. And I suspect very strongly that this is a very good example of me doing that, because I don't really think these are things. For example, it starts off when it says, that is to say, we didn't go into 2.1 development with grand designs of large new pieces of content or huge features. So didn't go into could be read to mean, or the next part of that that's not being said is, but we ended up doing it anyway, or but we decided to do this, or but we added this just because. So it could be that there is like one big feature in 2.1. Again, I don't think that's the case. I think what this blog is saying, and I'm just being my usual over-interpreting self, I think this is saying is that there really isn't anything big coming in. And another part of this, how my brain kind of works and goes into overdrive, is it says, it will be mostly these things, which means that and that definitely means there are other things as well. So it's not just those four that they've listed, there is other stuff as well, okay? That I'm pretty sure is certain, but I think we're still talking minor stuff. So what do they list here? I might do, it kind of depends on if we do get extra Friday Facts. I'll talk about that in a moment, but if we don't, I might do some videos speculating about these, because in particular quality of life, when I did the Your Thoughts Roundup, video, quite a lot of what you suggested were what I would call quality of life and small features, and it might be fun to go through some of them and basically do almost like an assessment of whether I think they'll make it or not. An example there is a couple of people mentioned in the what's it called, rate calculator mod, and Ruby have already said that that's not, they won't be putting that sort of thing in. They did the rates, the number it produces per minute or second, I think it is, when you do the hover over, that was their equivalent to that. They're not going to put in rate calculator. They've been pretty categorical, but something that you guys might have, you mentioned might be a good candidate for there, and it might be fun to run through those. And I was always hoping to do that. I've just not had the time / been too lazy. So quality of life stuff, I'm not going to kind of speculate, but I could look at some of those. And again, small features, that might be, I'm sort of thinking of those together really. But a small feature might be something like, I mentioned in the first video that, communication between platforms and, surfaces is kind of not really there. You've got to do a lot of weird workarounds in order to try and get it to do some stuff that you can basically already do with trains. So a small feature might be taking something that you can basically already do with trains and having platforms do it as well, or giving them more logic options or something like that. Those are small features that are going to help a lot and could be quality of lifestyle as well, but it's nothing revolutionary. It's not going to change how you play the game. Fixes and some game polish is interesting. Is that referring again to this balancing thing of the one or two exceptions, the LDS shuffle and the casino? Is that what they're talking about? I would hope, and I mentioned this in the main video read through, one of the things that's been weird to me is that parameterization, the descriptions given in the game on some of it are wrong, and just literally wrong. It says, if you use this variable, it does this, or this symbol, as it were, to do this, and it doesn't. It literally does not do that, and it's almost like the entries in the table are just misplaced, and it feels like that's a super simple fix. As in, rather than A equals doing this and B equals doing this, they've accidentally swapped them around, and it's and it says what B does where A does. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of that. It feels like that's simple of a fix to do that, but they still haven't done it, and I don't quite know why. So yeah, that to me is the type of things for fixing and polishing, basically. Modding improvements, I think, is just improving the the modding API and adding more things to it and letting people do more stuff. Maybe I'll get my big wish list items if they do add those in. I'd love to learn how to mod on Factorio, but again, it's just not having the time. Maybe when I'm retired, and that's what I'll do. So another example idea with the small features is of something we've kind of discussed before, and I've discussed extensively, and that they've pretty much confirmed is coming in. I don't know that they've explicitly stated it, but it's the whole thing of quality trains. You have this issue at the moment where very late game for very big mega bases, trains are actually worse than like stacked belts, because the combination of quality items, stacked items on level 4 transport belts basically means that their throughput is higher. Effectively, you can't take stuff off trains quick enough, type of thing, to make them viable, and they don't move quick enough. So a lot of people want quality traction engines, quality trains, and potentially quality cargo wagons to compensate for that. So bigger cargo inventories, faster moving trains, even faster than with just nuclear fuel. And one of the big hold-ups to that, as I've explained several times, but people still seem to argue with me, is that if you say you get the quality level for, you make your first uncommon train. So every train you've got is common, and you want to upgrade some of them to uncommon. Okay, use an upgrade planner because you don't want to do it manually. What does that mean? Well, that means that train needs to stop somewhere in order for bots to turn up with the replacement. It could be moving around and never stopping, that train. So how will bots get to it? Or it stops on the network somewhere and completely log jams your system, because the bots would have to empty out all of the cargo or the fuel, from the actual train, replace it with a new train. And if you've ever hooked up trains, you notice how slightly janky they are in terms of connecting. And do all of that, at once, or what? How that happens is not simple. You could have a train that is moving so quickly that bots are just floating around, never getting to it, even super fast bots. And I say they would have to empty all the coal, not coal, you'd be using something higher level then, but, the fuel out of it and the cargo out of it before they could replace it. It doesn't replace in place, I wouldn't have thought, because you're picking the item up, It sounds like they've got some fix for that. What that is, I don't know, but, whether it's logic-based or what have you. But that's the type of small feature I think they are saying that they have put in. Another one that, I'm already mentioning in those videos is what about the display panel? The display panel was a massive disappointment for me, because it seemed like it'd be a really cool way of getting the game to dynamically tell you, like on the map, you've got 6,000 iron plates here, and you can get it to do that, but my God, is it a faff? And who bothers, If it could just have a logic thing on it, to show you the item count. So you set it to iron plate and it shows the number of iron plates that it's getting from the circuit network. That's what I want it for. And that's not what it does, So that's an example of something I think would count as a small feature, polish, improvement, fix, whatever you want to call it. So next one then, and again, this is me massively reading into something that they're not actually saying, and it's the sin of omission rather than anything else, and my brain latching onto that. So what I think they are saying is that there is nothing like properly new and big in the game that's big in the game, okay? But they have a list here to state it clearly, right? And it's more about what they're not saying than what they are saying. So they say no new planets, okay? A moon is not a planet. Now, I don't think they're adding moons. I don't think that's what it means. But if you say no new planets, that doesn't exclude a moon or a space station or something like that. But I don't. It's just So that's where my brain fills in gaps that aren't there, basically. That just mean, there are no moons in the game at the moment, so you wouldn't necessarily think of saying no moons. Do you see what I mean? So I don't think that's being added, but that's the type of thing my brain just does, basically. Next one then is no new enemies. So again, we're not getting a completely new enemy, but first off, would Gribbly, the jellyfish type, does that count as new? Because we saw him and we knew he was there for a while. Is that new? I think so. I don't think that's going in, but that's the type of thing you could interpret that to mean. And the other one would be tweaks or variants, basically. So no, we're not getting a new enemy, but maybe you could take that as being, well, we're getting a super behemoth biter, or a mega pentapod, or a giganto demolisher, something like that. Again, I don't think any of those are actually being added, but no new enemies doesn't stop them adding variants of enemies. And then we've got no new research trees or resource change, which kiboshes all of my, build a mega structure and all these sorts of things from my first video. Again, as I've said before, I never really expected any of that to get added. It was just sort of fun to speculate. So there we go. We've got a list of 3. What's missing? Buildings. There's no mention of buildings or machines at all. So another inserter, another belt level. I don't think any of these will be added, but they're not included. So there could be some additional machine, particularly a small one that they got halfway through developing and then didn't bother finishing. Could be added, but I doubt it. Weapons. There's no mention of weapons or personal equipment. They could add like a level 3 shield or something like that. That would be, just better, but it's just a palette swap almost. You don't necessarily really have to work on it. It's just a better shield sort of thing. And on that front, I just occurred to me, trains could get equipment grids. That's something that they've been added for tanks. Spidertron already has them. Why can't trains have equipment grids? Again, I think a lot of those at least are too big for what they're saying, because the point is the new part here. They keep saying no new. And I think that's what you're really meant to take from this, that there's not going to be anything new in the game. The next one I wanted to pick on was a bit of a sort of again, me reading too much into it, probably, was this platform support and compatibility. This is in the long-term support. Now we know, obviously, literally the last Friday Facts, or last 2, were about the putting it onto Switch 2. There have been calls. It's not something I personally would particularly care about for like a console version. So could platform support compatibility mean it could come to platforms? Maybe. I think if it does come to any, then the Steam machine is an obvious candidate, because it's basic. It is. It's not basic. It's literally a PC, running Steam OS type of thing. So it's effectively an expansion to the Steam Deck in a sense, or a version of the Steam Deck. So that could be, assuming of course Steam machine isn't dead on arrival because of the whole RAM situation. Timing on that's just awful. But basically, so I think it will be on Steam machine. Whether there's a version that's designed for Steam machine and the Steam controller maybe really, then the new one, then that could be a thing. But more intriguingly, I think, is the possibility of Helix, Project Helix. Whether that is actually what it's called or not. The next Xbox is, we'll say rumoured to be, but it's pretty much confirmed that it's basically just a PC in a box. It's a preset PC with particular integration for playing games on your couch with a controller. Particular display that suits that rather than being close to a monitor. But they pretty much said it will allow you to put other storefronts on it, Epic and all that sort of stuff. So effectively it's just a PC. So again, that would be compatibility more with an Xbox controller, which I think is kind of there already. I think you can use an Xbox controller to play the game. So effectively that would be more about putting it into, again, if it's Steam, you've kind of got it, but it'd be more about putting it into the Xbox ecosystem, meaning it would need to pass the cert like it did for Nintendo in order to get onto the Xbox storefront. Basically, that's the difference. Okay, so those are the speculations I had about what might be coming and what have you. As I say, it's a bit open-ended because it's not really talking about anything. There's nothing, I think, in that gameplay image of, I don't think there's any little Easter eggs in here, but there might be little secrets of things that are coming. If it's there, I can't see it. There's two other topics I did want to just sort of cover. First is whether we'll get more Friday Facts. My suspicion is not. I think this is effectively you're not getting any more Friday Facts posts, because I think we'll get one, when it goes to experimental, particularly if it's a bit later, if it's not quite made the end of June deadline and it's actually in July, or maybe it's earlier. I think we'll get one there just to make it clear to everyone that it's there, and just again to repeat the point that you have to get to experimental in order to play the 2.1, and maybe how to do that. So I think there'll be one then. I then also think there'll be one post summer into the autumn winter period, when they basically see it's now stable, that's it, thank you very much, here's our memories. Sort of a super duper end for Factorio Friday Facts. I suspect we'll get those too. I don't know, obviously, and this may be it. This may be the last one, but it just feels like they'll put a capstone on it. I suspect they might also use either one or both of those to tease a little bit more about what they're thinking about the games, or at least give maybe a see you in 2029 or something, or 2030 or something. For that's the sort of timescale we're thinking about. For the new game. And then, I suspect they'll probably use Friday Facts as like a way of marketing, or at least prompting us to go and look at this new game and what have you. So I suspect there may be a few from that point of view. But in terms of whether we get actual Friday Facts talking about new features coming, I don't know. There are, they are kind of teasing that they might be, in the sense that, having said there'll be quality of life, some small features, fixes and game polishes, modding improvements, well, explaining those would be typical Friday Facts, saying we're adding, I can't remember what a good quality of life one there is, like when they tweaked all the blueprints and stuff like that. That's the type of stuff that would go into Friday Facts. So I think they've probably got the ammunition, the material to do Friday Facts. It's about whether they want to do them, whether they feel they need to, whether there's, maybe they're all quality of life so small that they have to stick 10 in to make it a decent showing, and therefore they can't be bothered, basically. But no, my belief is that we won't be getting weekly Friday Facts. I mean, this one came out at a weird time. It's always been 12 o'clock on the dot, UK time, and this was 2:15 or something that this came out. So yeah, I think they're just it's a winding down thing. So, why put in all that effort for relatively small returns? We'll maybe get a couple, but my suspicion is probably just the big, it's available, it's stable, and that might be it. If they do them, though, I will do Friday Facts videos. These, I massively enjoy doing these. I always have done. So yeah, I have massively enjoyed. I guess this is almost a sign off then, isn't it? In case there aren't any more Friday Facts. But yeah, I have massively enjoyed doing these, and if there are more Friday Facts, I will do some sort of video on them. I think I think I skipped the one where they actually announced the Switch 2 announcement. It's probably the only one I've skipped, because it was just so I don't care. I don't have a Switch. I will never get a Switch 1 or 2 or 3 sort of thing. So yeah, completely irrelevant to me. So I just skipped it. But yeah, so if it's about anything, quality of life, feature improvements, all this sort of stuff, then I'll do the Friday Facts. I will milk this content for all that I'm worth. But yes, no, it has been a great deal of fun. I enjoyed chatting about them on the live streams, and speaking of which, I will be doing, if I get this edited in time, I will do a live stream on Sunday. So this is probably going to come out Saturday, and I'll do a live stream on Sunday. But yeah, that was always that was kind of what I actually enjoyed about when I did live, when I was properly doing live streaming, was people coming and talking about the Friday Facts and speculating about them with me. And when that dried up, I kind of lost all interest in live streaming. It just became almost a chore in a sense. Never really a streamer. Okay, last thing then is content plans. As I say, if they do the Friday Facts, I will do the videos to talk about them, speculate about them in my usual way, just like this. However, as I say, I suspect we'll just get a couple at those most important points, in which case, there just kind of won't be any of these. The timing of it is actually really good. If they do start doing them, basically the law speculation videos, the next one that goes up in, is it 2 weeks time from this? So at the very beginning of June, not very beginning, second Friday of June, will be the last in the first series of first season of the law speculation videos. It's kind of been trying to tell a story across it. They lead into each other and that sort of thing. I don't know that I've really succeeded at that, but this sort of caps off. So the next one is on Prometheum Science, and that is the end, the end of the expansion. So that's like the end of this law strand, as it were. And I do have more topics, and I have some scripts written, but there'll be a gap, basically. And if that gap is quite long, then it'll be long because of what else I'm planning. If we get the Friday Facts, I'll be doing them instead. Those will be my, we'll get weekly videos rather than monthly sort of thing. That they'll come in and that'll put a pause on everything else. Well, when we get 2.1, when that comes on stream, I'll do a series on that. It will almost certainly be live streams, as I say. That's why what I'm talking about, live streams will return, and I'll probably maybe do more random streams, so they're not, it's not always just 2 hours on a Sunday sort of thing. I'll do them a lot more frequently, and it'll become what I do this summer, basically, is play through the 2.1 enhancement and see what I feel about that, as it were. So those are the kind of two concrete but unsure things. Friday Facts videos, if and when, playthrough of 2.1, when, law videos going on hold until both of those are done, basically. But more, as I say, because I'll be doing other things, law speculation will come back, but it could be, depending on how long 2.1 takes me to play through, it could be winter or something like that before it returns properly. Oh, and I guess also one of the things I did think is that, if 2.1's coming in and it is tweaking a few things, I just need to wait, because it could tweak something that a lot of my law speculation, as you've seen, is based on there's this object in the game. What does that mean, as it were? Well, if they remove that object, that video is rendered redundant. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like, or they change it, or change what it says in Factoriopedia or something, then that changes that video. So it makes sense to wait until that's out, and then I can adjust any videos I've got, or write new ones, type of thing. So that's another reason to wait. The big change though for streaming is that I will only be streaming to Twitch. For quite a while I was using Restream to stream to both YouTube and Twitch. I didn't really enjoy that experience. The Restream itself is a bit rubbish. It's completely free, so it's difficult to criticise it. I didn't really like it. It was really clunky, and I had to do, you would set it up to go live, and then when it went live, all the settings changed, which was just really annoying. But also, I didn't really like the experience of being across two chats. Also, and if you saw any of particularly the Satisfactory streams, I also don't like, if I'm totally honest, I'd rather have the VODs as videos, whereas at the moment in YouTube you have to go into the live streaming section in order to watch the archived live streams rather than it just being a video, and so it's sort of hidden and weird. So what I'm going to do, they are going to be on YouTube, and this is the other thing, because if I do anything non-Factorio, you all hate it, basically. You're all here for Factorio, which is fine, fair enough. But if I do any random games, or like I did the substructure, and more on that in a second, well, they still don't get, they're not bad. They don't, people aren't, it's not more dislikes than likes sort of thing. But they always do really badly in terms of both views, and also the like to dislike ratio is way, way worse compared to the Factorio stuff. Even when on Factorio things I'm wibbling on about some nonsense that's completely bonkers in the law videos, people, still appreciate it, I guess. But if it's any other video game, they seem to just hate it. The audience is not there. So I have a second channel called Triggles, VODs and Sods, which is probably a bad name to give it, because it's odds and sods is like a British expression meaning any old bits and pieces, random things. And so all of my VODs will now go on there, be they Factorio or other games, and also any other games that I want to talk about or play or anything like that. They'll all go on the second channel. Okay, which I know people don't subscribe to second channels. That's fine. It's not monetized, so you won't get, well, you'll get ads because YouTube sticks them on anyway, but it won't be monetized in that sense. It doesn't have memberships. It doesn't have any of that stuff. So the point is that all of the VODs will go there and other videos, and some of those videos will be on Substructure. They put out a blog post, bit like a Friday Facts. It was a bit, introductory and a bit not stuff I would talk about in a normal Friday Facts, so I probably won't do a video on that. But as part of that, they had a document that they'd commissioned, like a research thing, or a kind of ideas document from an actual physics professor, I think, and it talks about some of the concepts, or ideas for ideas for themes, stories, gameplay things in this little document. And I think I might do a few videos on that because it's quite fascinating for me anyway. But as I say, since you all hate Substructure, I mean, you don't, I'm exaggerating, but it got really negative reaction. I don't understand why. I'll put that on the second channel. And it's like, I also get, I still get keys sent through to me, game keys. I'm interested in checking them out and doing something on the channel, but I'm clearly not a variety content person. It just doesn't work for this channel. So if I stick them on the VODs and SODs, there's something there. You can go and watch it if you like me, as it were, or are interested in those games. And I can maybe do shorts or something on here, or just little videos of here's the 2-minute wrap-up version, or here's the promo thing to go and watch that, or something like that maybe on here. It'd be something new for me as well to try. It's a very long way of explaining things, as per usual, but yes, the basic point is that I have a second channel, VODs and SODs. There'll be a link in the description. There'll be a million links in the description. Go and subscribe there if you want to see any of my VODs from now on, or any random videos that I do that aren't Factorio. So that's it, I think. So that's I made some notes basically, so I tried to cover it all. But yeah, those are the content plans. Factorio is going to be what this channel is about. The law speculation will be a mainstay. I have some other video series in mind that I will do. You may hate them, but I'll be ploughing on. I hope you enjoyed today's Friday Facts video and might consider coming back for another one. I've been Trismegistus. This has been Factorio. Thanks for watching. Cheers. God, I miss doing these. Something like that. How many billion hours is this going to take me to edit?